Tonight, we take a look at the top 10 costliest storms the world has ever seen. Another worldwide season animation is released. Cesar plays the Super Cyclone Challenge. And we take a look at part 3 of the Storm Summaries for 2017. Don't forget you can vote live on the website force13.com/hw2017.html for your favourite storm for Saturday's feature, where we take a look at the top 10 most favoured storms as voted by you. So here we are again, it's day 3 of Hurricane Week. It's been a fantastic week so far, at least I think so, hope you agree. Tonight we're brimmed up to the eyeballs with features. All of those that we've just said is going to take quite some time, so there's going to be no live section after the 2-hour period tonight. We're going to be saving all that for tomorrow. Today we're covering the top 10 costliest storms, which you'll see shortly. If you missed the first 2, we started with the deadliest. Yesterday it was the top 10 most intense. Tomorrow we're looking at the top 10 strongest, and on Friday you get to see Force 13's top 10 storms, followed by yours on Saturday. So lots more to come, and plenty of fun features to come as well. We're saving a lot of those for the end of the week too. But now, I guess we'll sit back and watch the top 10 costliest storms roll right before our eyes. Here they are. Tonight we begin with Hurricane Irene, which began in the Lesser Antilles, passing over Puerto Rico, sort of became a hurricane whilst it was doing that, peaking over the Bahamas as a Category 3, and then skirting up the US East Coast. Perhaps this storm has been overshadowed by others in recent times, especially the next year, but it still made landfall on the Outer Banks as a Category 1 and almost made it to New York as a hurricane. It was 70 miles an hour there, I believe, and then turned post-tropical off towards Newfoundland and Labrador. Here's the satellite imagery of the storm as it progressed. You can see it there becoming a hurricane, moving off towards the northwest. It really looked good at various points whilst it was blowing up as a Category 3. It just didn't sustain itself for very long. That's why it wasn't any stronger than what it was assessed to be, 115 miles per hour at its peak, a pressure in the lower 940s. There it is shooting off towards the north, and then it just really capitulated, which people had a little bit of a sigh of relief, but it was still a hurricane by the time it reached the US, and then it just went right up the coast, caused a lot of flooding problems for the Outer Banks region in particular, some of which was rather historic actually. Here's another satellite view of the storm as it was powering through there with the pressure observations. Yes, still looked pretty good on visible as it was approaching land. And the next thing we're going to look at is a view of how it looked on radar as it was moving towards the coast. There it is, I'm sure you wouldn't want that heading your way. And as you can see, quite a few tornado warnings went into effect as the storm was coming through. Irene caused quite a lot of damage, that's why it's in the top 10 of course. It's the 10th costliest storm, with a damage price tag of at least $16 billion. And of course being in 2011, it killed around 49, and you're going to see on the stats shortly. Here's some more views of the storm, the visible shots from the satellites. These are probably the MODIS or Aquaterra satellites. A view from the International Space Station here, and another view from higher up as the storm was passing the New England area. Look at the erosion that was caused in the Outer Banks, made 1 or 2 new islands. Roads were impassable. Now this one certainly was. And to structures as well. The storm certainly did a number on that house and many others like it. And of course the flooding, which also resulted from this storm. So all told, 49 fatalities. The price tag, as said, $16.6 billion. Its intensity score is 8. Our score from Force 13 is 23. Now on to Hurricane Ivan, which gained its reputation before it impacted any land areas because of how far south it managed to attain such an intensity that it did, first peaking as a Category 4 before weakening slightly on approach to the Lesser Antilles, impacting the Windward Islands. Grenada in particular got a major hurricane, pretty much a landfall, into a Category 5 in the Caribbean Sea and then off towards Jamaica. One of those storms that gives a tour of almost every Caribbean area in some form or other, passing very close to Grand Cayman as a Category 4, then becoming a Category 5 for the third time, moving through the Yucatan Channel and then off into the Gulf of Mexico, where it made its final landfall near Pensacola as a Category 3 or 4, close to Mobile actually, where it made landfall, and then moving off towards the northeast. But it wasn't done yet. It swung by again for round 2 as it passed through Florida of all places, just north of Miami, and then off into the Gulf of Mexico again. Tropical depression, weak tropical storm, secondary peak, or maybe even a 5th peak or something or other, and there it was dissipating over Texas. So this is how it progressed on the satellite pictures, and as you can see it intensified quite a lot, and then the pressures jumped up and down and the winds jumped up and down as it was moving through the Caribbean, tossing and turning between Category 4 and 5 on 3 separate occasions. Not many storms have done that, and then off it went into the US. Certainly not many, if any, have gone on to have a second life after it did that. There it is, and just exactly how it happened on the satellite imagery there, and then moving into Texas and Louisiana. Here was the radar imagery of Ivan making its landfall in Alabama. Had a little swing to the right hand side just before it did so, and here is a picture not long before it was peaking, or one of its peaks, and there is another infrared image of it at landfall. There's a short loop of the imagery, and here's a picture inside Ivan's eye. Not many of these images get out. There's another visible image of the storm when it was at its 3rd peak, and this is what it looked like on Grenada. A lot of damage occurred there. You can see that stadium roof was affected, and this is what it looked like on the US coast. Ivan damaged at least 58,000 homes and destroyed entirely 31,000, and that's a minimum number, and you can perhaps see why. Well, in all, 124 were killed, with a price tag of $20 billion, intensity score of 13, and our score, we're giving it 32. Looking innocent enough, a tropical depression formed in mid-August 1992 became a little tropical storm by the name of Andrew, and after struggling a bit for a few days, not getting below 1,000 millibars until it got near hurricane strength, it eventually did as it was entering the West Atlantic, and then took aim for the Bahamas, and boy did it, becoming a Category 5, striking there, moving through, and then hitting Florida, of course, at a second Category 5 peak intensity. Somehow it managed to ramp up all the way to 175 miles an hour at its first peak, and still managed to make a Category 3 landfall on Louisiana after all was done. Here's a look on the satellite imagery of what Andrew did. There it is, moving through, struggling, and then intensifying, the eye appearing, and there it goes. And once it started, it never stopped, did it? Until it reached the US continent via Louisiana. Here's another satellite view of it, and a visible loop. 1.4 million people evacuated from Andrew. That was probably the largest evacuation at the time. Here's a radar imagery of just exactly why people did that. As you can see, Andrew bore down and really struck there in the early hours of August the 24th, 1992. And the storm's effects were felt south of Miami, in the Homestead area in particular, around the northernmost keys, for weeks afterwards. Shortages of all kinds were apparent there, and it was a very miserable affair in southern Florida for quite some time afterwards. And here are some views of the immediate damage from this hurricane. In all, at least 206,000 buildings were damaged by Andrew, and 68,000 were destroyed entirely. And of course, those statistics don't even include vehicles and all those boats, for one, that were destroyed, and trees that were defoliated, and there's a wooden plank straight through one of them, an indicator of a very strong hurricane landfall usually. The final picture there was from a tornado spawned in Louisiana. 65 were killed by Andrew. It cost $26.5 billion, and our score, we're giving it 33. Well, this is the first storm to have made it on 2 of our top 10s this week. It's Hurricane Wilma again, which became a tropical storm in mid-October 2005, and after its brutal intensification phase, one of the fastest recorded to Category 5 intensity. We already spoke about how intense it was on Monday, and it did indeed reach a pressure of somewhere around 878 by our estimates in millibars, and a peak wind speed probably somewhere near 200 miles per hour. And there it was shooting off towards the northeast, but amongst all that, it caused a huge amount of damage as well. That's why it's on the top 10 costliest list of storms. Here it is again, going through to remind you of all the satellite imagery of the storm, and just to prove how this storm could have caused so much damage, which it did. I don't think it needs any convincing when you take a look at all of that imagery there, of it spiraling around at that peak intensity, still mesmerizing to the viewer. And again, as it was moving through towards Cozumel, moving right over that island and into the Yucatan Peninsula, pretty close to Cancun as well, where it weakened substantially, and then the eye popped out again, a new eye forming there, and then became a Category 3 and delivered a real punch to Florida, where most of the damage, of course, occurred on both sides of the peninsula, and then it shooted off towards the northeast and affected no one else but the fishes. Here is a view from the International Space Station, and despite seeing all the images on satellite, we still don't have all that too much specific information about Wilma's damages. You can see it caused a lot of flooding. It was mainly the surge in Florida, but obviously high winds as well, lots of buildings damaged, probably a few tornadoes in there too. A whole building has collapsed in that image. But the price tag is amountable to $29.4 billion, 87 died, and Force 13 scores it 32. For the time being, Hurricane Maria sits in 6th place as we await further details of the final damage cost. We're using the lowest possible bound for fairness at the moment, making a Category 5 landfall on Dominica and almost on Puerto Rico, weakening just to Category 4 just before impacting. Didn't make much of a difference though, unfortunately. Then moved off towards the northeast out to sea, and sort of lost its way whilst it was doing that, and eventually just veered close to the US East Coast, but didn't really get there, and sort of limply moved off towards the northeast as a tropical storm borderline hurricane, and off it went towards the east and ended up somewhere in the North Atlantic, who knows where. Let's take a look at some satellite imagery of the storm. Of course, it wasn't very long ago at all. I'm sure everyone remembers it. Here it was, intensifying all the way, and its rapid intensification phase culminating in that landfall in Dominica, which was completely decimated by the storm. The country's power grid probably still isn't intact properly, and it was at least a month before any significant progress was made on that. And there it was, still trying its hardest, but then crumpling at the seams by the looks of things, Maria. One more go at it had, it said, and then eventually it just got away from itself and started to weaken in earnest, somewhere around now. There it goes, half of the eye wall completely disintegrated there, and it was still trying to get itself back. Still became a hurricane once more, as it was up near the US East Coast, but really was a shadow of its former self, which a lot of people would be pleased about. I certainly was. And then it moved out towards the sea, and of course turned post-tropical as it started to look even worse. There it goes. But it didn't look as bad as how Puerto Rico looked. A country whose economy was already unstable, and the future is still unknown about how that's going to play out over there as well with what happened after Maria. Some places, probably a fair proportion, still don't have power after this storm, which occurred around 3 months ago now. There it was, making landfall on the southeastern part of Puerto Rico, almost a Category 5, around 150-155 miles an hour at landfall. Here's some more imagery of the storm near its peak. That's just after its landfall in Dominica there. I remember us being live to cover that on Force 13. And there's a loop of the storm striking land, and here's some of the images then. Now this is how it looked in one area of Dominica. As you can see, pretty much every tree there must be millions in that shot, defoliated. There's the capital, Rosao, and the lots of buildings there damaged. Pretty much every building in Dominica was damaged to some extent, which is something that you can't really say very often at all. On par probably with some of the very historic hurricanes of many centuries ago that we barely know anything about. If they'd have struck today, maybe we would have seen this or worse for some of these islands. A rarity, of course. And there's some more flooding pictures. I think these are now in Puerto Rico. Obviously a lot of flooding also occurred there, as well as the strong wind damage and the damage to infrastructure. There's another shot of what looks to me to be a very unstable building along the shore, and buildings inland there amongst shadows of trees with all their branches and leaves ripped apart. And there's another shot of the flooding there as well. In all, Maria has killed at least 129. The price tag is at a minimum 33 billion. It will rise, and our score at the moment is at 35. And we'll catch up with the rest of the top 10, the top 5, coming up shortly. First of all, though, we're going to be taking a look at what happened worldwide. We're doing another worldwide Cyclone season animation, and it's going to be debuting right now. The 1951, which we did several months ago, turned out to be rather popular, so there's probably going to be more on the way. Tonight, we're looking at 1992. Since January 2016, Force 13 has been compiling a database of all cyclones that have ever been recorded, complete with 41 different statistical values and utilizing Force 13's SADOPS analysis for storms post-1978. So far, we have catalogued over 13,000 storms in the database, with over 115,000 individual data values. Now, we're going to take a look at 1992 from the database worldwide. now we have Hurricane Ike, which at the time, in September 2008, was the second costliest storm ever. Here it is, rapidly intensifying in the Atlantic, becoming a Category 4, reaching a peak intensity by our reckoning of around 150 miles an hour, slightly above the official analysis, and then moving through the Turks and Caicos Islands, impacting Cuba as a Category 4. Reminds you a little bit of Irma, doesn't it? And then moving through Cuba, this bit doesn't, into the Gulf of Mexico, and then onto Category 2 intensity, which it maintained all the way pretty much until its landfall in Texas, just east of Houston. Moving inland and then off towards the northeast. Actually kept tropical storm intensity as it turned extratropical. Here it is then as it moved through, intensifying rather quickly at first and then holding its intensity for the most part. Little bits of fluctuations, then through Cuba obviously it weakened and then a little bit stronger and still had a big storm surge by the time it reached Texas, and that was the main feature really, along with those strong winds and some flooding. Here was another view, a satellite view of the storm as it moved through from the GOES satellites at the time, and still always struggled to get its eye out properly as it approached Texas. This is what it looked like on the ground shortly after the storm's arrival. Did you know that 3.6 million people evacuated from this storm? A remarkable figure. 350,000 buildings were damaged, 143,000 were destroyed, and 195 people lost their lives. It's quite easy to see why, especially if any of those people didn't evacuate. I'm pretty sure they would have. It was probably mandatory. And of course, this was not Ike's strongest landfall. This is all from the Texas landfall. Its strongest landfall was actually in Cuba, one of Cuba's costliest storms, I think, if not the costliest storm over there as well. 195 dead. The total cost reached $37.5 billion, and Force 13 score gives it 32. Here's another storm we're waiting for more information for. It's Hurricane Irma, currently at number 4, may well rise further yet. Obviously we know all about Irma and the damages that it has caused so far, obviously levelling the island of Barbuda, which you will eventually see. As you can see, very humble beginnings, started life in Africa, tropical disturbance over the Cape Verde Islands, becoming a tropical storm at the end of August on the last day, and then moving into the main area of the Atlantic and deciding whether to become a Category 2 or 3 for a little while before going all the way to Category 5 and then impacting the Lesser Antilles. Everyone knows the rest. Moving through there just north of Puerto Rico and north of Hispaniola, passing over one or two of the tiny islands of the Turks and Caicos and then into Cuba, another Category 5 landfall there, and then onto the Florida Keys and Florida, the peninsula, moving inland and then turning into a remnant low. Just to remind yourselves, here's another view of all the satellite imagery of the storm as it progressed across its very long track. Almost 2 million people at least evacuated from this storm, 1.96, and a lot of them were right to, of course. This storm damaged 131,000 buildings at least, and has so far destroyed at least 23,000. It's probably higher than that. So putting all of that into perspective, the price tag so far that we're giving it is $47.9 billion. That may probably be higher, but we still don't yet have a final number, and until then we're going with the lower bound until we have a better idea. Obviously it made at least one 185 mile an hour landfall with its minimum pressure of 914 millibars. In total it made 10 landfalls. That's quite a lot, especially for an Atlantic storm. Here's another view of the storm as it was progressing on the visible GOES 16 1-minute imagery, and I'm sure many of you were watching our coverage at the time for Hurricane Irma, which took a toll on many of us, of course, and we were there for days talking about this storm, and obviously pales in comparison to what was seen on the ground. This was on the island of St. Martin. On both sides, the French and Dutch side in total, the price tag is probably getting close to 10 billion euros at least. That is somewhere around the same in dollars, maybe a little more. But there is a picture of the type of damage that was seen on that island at least. And that is one story of oh so many across the Lesser Antilles, the Leeward Islands in particular, from Hurricane Irma. Billions of dollars of damages across a lot of those islands, and the US cost is still a little bit sketchy as well, isn't it? Well, let's take a look at the numbers in earnest. 134 fatalities at least, a cost, a minimum bound of $47.9 billion, and Force 13 score so far of 36. Now, you may remember this storm, Hurricane Sandy. The US media went completely crazy over this one, if you remember, becoming a tropical storm in late October 2012, impacting Cuba as a Category 3 after passing through Jamaica and surviving, basically, looking a little bit ragged at this point, and then moving off towards the northeast as a Category 1, somehow reaching Category 2 once again, and then impacting the coast of the US. This map really doesn't do it justice apart from the track. It looks much more interesting on satellite. This is what actually happened then. The storm intensifying there, looking very tropical to begin with, moving through Jamaica and Cuba, look at that eye, and then ballooning up over the western Atlantic and barely remaining tropical. Looked frontal for a little while there, didn't it? And then moving off towards the northeast, still somehow retaining its tropicality until it finally let go just before it made landfall, not after trying to develop an eye once more, and then slamming into New Jersey, into Pennsylvania and the rest of inland New England. Here's some 1-minute visible imagery of how the storm developed on its final 5 days or so. You can see it there, the center of the storm just off the Bahamas, then moving off towards the north the next day here, moving rather slowly at this point, wasn't it, and then off towards the northeast, slowly picked up pace as it curved round the Outer Banks, and then off towards the north, northwest, and into New England. And here it is just before it made that landfall. There it is, moving off and accelerating as it did so, delivering hurricane force winds to a very wide area indeed. And that was the day after, inland there, still swirling away and covering much of the northeastern part of the US. There's a wide shot of the day after it made landfall, just a massive comma over the US. And this is what the power grid looked like. You can see a lot of New Jersey went out the next day after Hurricane Sandy, and this is why. You can see a lot of the surge took its toll on these buildings in particular. I think this is Long Island or New Jersey or somewhere around there, one of the barrier islands, and then you can see a lot of flooding and sand in the roads and a lot of buildings damaged. Damage like this has not really been seen in that part of the US for probably a few decades, really. Quite difficult to pin down an actual time when the last storm actually caused damage like this, if it actually has happened at all. In terms of cost, the damage of course was astronomical, reaching $75 billion in damages. The amount of buildings destroyed totaled around 182,000 damaged, 15,000 destroyed, and 233 people died. It yields a score of 40 according to Force 13's algorithm. A storm that's not quite number one yet because we're waiting for the finalised data, but still at least number two. And the lower bound of Hurricane Harvey's damage is probably the highest potential number from Hurricane Sandy at $75 billion according to Force 13's independent estimate. Starting life in the Caribbean as a weak tropical storm, and then starting again in the Gulf of Mexico after passing through Central America as a remnant low. Harvey, of course, re-intensified very quickly indeed, especially when it was moving up towards the coast of Texas. It really didn't let up on the pedal at all, making landfall as a Category 4 in Texas with winds of 140 miles an hour and a pressure of around 938 millibars. It came out again for a little while and then moved back into the coast of Louisiana as a tropical storm, delivering near record or record amounts of rain to the area, and then moved towards the northeast as a tropical depression. Survived a little bit longer there into early September. Here's what it looked like on the satellite imagery, passing the Cape Verde Islands to the south. At first we didn't know which of those systems there would develop into Harvey, but it was eventually the one to the west, and sooner or later it did become a tropical storm, moving through the Lesser Antilles there, and at first we thought it was going to be one of those Caribbean graveyard storms that didn't last the duration until it regenerated in the Gulf of Mexico, and it always had the potential to do that. Here it is, just about to become a tropical depression again. There it was, and then the intensification began from there, real blow-ups of convection there, and then the eye started to appear with very quick timing, and then moving off towards the northwest, the eye coming out so much so just before that final landfall that I think the National Hurricane Center's number is a little bit low, and they'll probably up it in their post-season analysis. So there's the storm as it was moving over Texas, delivering, you should have seen it on the radar, another big flow up there over Louisiana and Texas, and it was the same areas that seemed to be getting pounded with the highest amounts of rainfall. There it was again, you saw those blows up of convection just to the eastern part of Texas that really got a lot of rainfall there, over 60 inches in some areas, of course. There's another shot of the storm moving into land on the infrared channel. Here's what it looked like on radar. Over 500,000 people evacuated from Hurricane Harvey's approach, and the storm damaged at least 185,000 buildings in its path and destroying at least 9,000. In total, 91 were killed, and the lowest number of cost so far is 75 billion. That will probably rise further. We'll find out what the total number actually is sooner or later, who knows when. But there is more pictures of this incredible landfall that occurred this year and the rain that resulted from it. That's one of my favourite pictures there of the infrared imagery just at landfall. Here's one or two little glimpses, windows into the flooding that occurred in Texas from the storm. This sort of scene was widespread, and if you remember some of our live events, if you were watching Force 13 at the time, some parts of Houston were under feet of water, probably even a few meters. 91 fatalities, at least 75 billion damages, and our current score for Harvey is 30. So for now, Hurricane Katrina still holds the record for costliest storm. That record may not last very long, but at the moment that's what we're keeping it as until further notice. That notice may come at any time, once the numbers for the other storms have been finalized. Just to remind you, if you weren't fully aware of Hurricane Katrina, it is 12 years ago now. Some people may not remember it anymore. Category 5 peak in the Atlantic, a minimum central pressure of 902 millibars and a high wind speed of 175 at least, making landfall as a Category 4, weakening down to Category 3 in Louisiana. And the main problem from Katrina was, of course, the failure of the levees around New Orleans, and pretty much the whole city was flooded. If it wasn't for the levee failures, Katrina wouldn't have been of half as bad a storm as it ultimately was, and Harvey would probably certainly be the most costliest storm by some distance. But here it is, making landfall there and then moving inland. Still caused huge amounts of damage away from New Orleans as well, with its massive storm surge and obviously its strong winds. Here are some pictures of New Orleans after the storm passed through, flooded up to the roof in some areas. There's some more shots of the extent of that flooding, which did affect several tens of thousands of people at the time, and some places still haven't recovered even today. So long ago was this storm when you really think about it, but still the city is recovering. Here's some other views of just wooden planks and parts of houses strewn all over the fields there. The Superdome, of course, where everyone took refuge and was in danger at one point during the height of the hurricane. Ships washed ashore, looking a little bit like Camille in that image. And here are some other areas that were really decimated by the effects of Hurricane Katrina. still number 1 for now at the moment. But still, regardless, a storm worth remembering for a very long time indeed. At least 1.1 million people evacuated from this storm. Katrina damaged at least 100,000 buildings and destroyed a further 10,000. Well, the numbers look like this: 1,833 fatalities, a damage price tag of 108 billion, and the current score from Force 13, 35. Well, there we are. I'm sure the order of that top 10 will change next year, if we were to do it next year, but unfortunately we probably won't. In any case, it's time to move on to probably the funnest feature of this evening's proceedings. It's now time for the game. It's the Super Cyclone Challenge presented by me, believe it or not, and Cesar's in the chair tonight. Take a look at this. Welcome to another episode of the Super Cyclone Challenge. My name's Nathan Foy, and tonight in the chair we have Cesar Gamez back again after it must have been a year at least since you were last in the chair.
Yes, it has been a quite long time ago, but I'm ready to be better than my last time. That I must say it wasn't the best. So I think in this challenge I will do better than the last time.
Now, you got to hurricane status last time. I have a feeling you'll do a little bit better this time because the difficulty overall during the game show has gone down a little bit since the last series. If you're not aware already, the questions have been cut down from 30 to 24. And as I've said before, that the 6 phases still remain, 4 questions per phase. At the end of each phase you have a safe zone where the speed you've accrued is guaranteed, and then you progress from there. You'll start the game, Cesar, with 4 lifelines. If you get your first 5 questions in a row correctly without needing to use a lifeline, you'll get a 5th for courtesy. How about that?
Sounds pretty good.
The 4 lifelines you begin with is the phone a friend, 50-50, flip the question, and the risk lifeline. What? Any strategy?
No.
For instance,
Not really.
I asked a few questions here. Do you think you're going to use the risk lifeline under any circumstances at all?
I hope not to
Never
do
been
it.
used before.
There's a question that I can't, that I don't know, I must be using one.
Very much a last resort. But hopefully you'll do pretty well and it'll be pretty easy to begin with. It certainly was for a few of our other contestants. Let's see how you do. You ready to play?
Yes.
All right.
I'm not ready. Yes, I'm ready.
Let's start phase 1 of the Super Cyclone Challenge. First of all, hey, how about that shirt of yours? What are you wearing?
Yes, it's a shirt of my favorite team, football team that I support here in Mexico. It's called Tigres. You can hear it, see it here. This shirt is like, it was about 40 years ago. And in my back I have the number 7 of a legendary player of Tigres back on that time.
Amazing. Is it worth a bit then, that shirt?
Actually, yes, this is the shirt when Tigres won their 2nd championship.
Wow. Well, how about that? Excellent. Well, I don't think we're going to get any football questions, unfortunately, but let's see how we do.
But it will help me to be a champion, so...
Excellent. Well, here we go.
We'll see.
Don't forget, on the first phase, you'll have only 20 seconds to answer each question. If you need a lifeline, just say lifeline. Don't think about which one it is until I stop the clock, okay? It's the best way to do it, really.
So I will answer after you ask the question? Sorry.
Yeah, yes, but I'm just saying, you've only got 20 seconds. So if you need to use a lifeline, just say lifeline and I'll stop the clock for you, okay?
Okay, I understood. Thank
All
you.
right, here we go. Here's question 1. Hopefully you won't need any. Hurricane Gaston existed last year in which basin? The North Atlantic, the Bay of Bengal, the Mediterranean Sea, or Lake Huron?
North Atlantic.
Final answer.
Yes.
Excellent, it's good. You up to 20 miles an hour. Excellent stuff. Shouldn't be too much of a problem for you. Let's see how we do. Question 4. On what date does the Atlantic hurricane season begin? A. June 15th, B. June 1st, C. May 15th, or D. January 1st?
June 1st.
Final.
Yes.
For Tropical Storm Cesar, yes it is, you bet! Tropical Storm Cesar is formed 40 miles an hour. Fake applause on the background. Are you going to do your high-pitched C's when you get the hurricane question right?
Yeah. Yeah, I did it.
He's done it already, oh god. It's gonna end up...
Okay.
Don't hiccup, by the way. Can't have hiccuping.
Oh.
He hates that.
I will try to not, actually.
Next question's worth 50 miles an hour. You can't lose at all on this one because you've reached your first safe zone. Here it comes. Which hurricane struck Belize in 2016? A. Hurricane Earl, B. Hurricane Hermine, C. Hurricane Matthew, or D. Hurricane Gaston?
Hurricane Earl.
Final answer?
Yes.
It is indeed. Very good. 50 miles an hour. And on to question number 6. Don't forget 30 seconds on these ones now, by the way. And you can walk away at any time on this without having to touch the question. Here we go. Number 6. And this is for 60 miles an hour. Which of these storm names was used by the Central Pacific Hurricane Center in 2015? Is it A. Pound, B. Ounce, C. Gram, or D. Kilo?
Kilo.
Final. I have to press you for the final. He's laughing. Oh, it is indeed. It was a kilo. Certainly not a pound or ounce. I'm not sure Cesar understands the irony in those answers.
Well, I understood pound.
Oh, good. Not the pound sterling, though.
Yeah, I know. But I understood that.
All right. Sorry. I underestimated. Number 7 is...
That's hot. Bad Nathan.
Bad me. Number 7 for 70 miles an hour. Here goes. No problem so far. It's excellent. What was the first Category 3 major cyclone of 2017? A. Cyclone Dineo, B. Cyclone Inawo, C. Cyclone Debbie, or D. Cyclone Donna?
Oh. Now that's a question.
It is?
I think it's Cyclone Inawo.
Final?
Yes.
Okay. You didn't sound sure on that one, Cesar.
I'm not that sure actually, but I think it was Inawo before Debbie.
An hour before Debbie. It certainly was. Inawo forming in February, Debbie forming in late March. Happy day. Oh my goodness. Now,
Wow.
let's quiet it down a little bit.
I struggled a bit. I struggled there.
Let's calm it down a touch here, Cesar. We're not out the woods yet. One more away from hurricane status. So this is a really important question. Obviously, if you get this wrong, you go down from 70 miles an hour back to 40, and we don't want that. We want you to get to 75. Oh. Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Here it is. Which of these storms were hurricanes in the 2015 Atlantic season? A. Anna, B. Bill, C. Danny, or D. Erica?
It was Annie.
Final.
Yes.
Yes, it is, and Cesar is a Category 1 hurricane, yet again.
Yay! I'm forming an eye. Come on.
He's forming an eye. Oh, that's true. What do your eye look like, Cesar? Ragged?
No, completely defined, like Typhoon Haiyan.
Pinhole?
Pinhole Haiyan, Stadium Effect, and 32 Celsius storm.
All right. The next set of questions, you'll have 40 seconds to think about them, so
Oh, 40 seconds.
That's nice. And obviously, if you start to run out of time, I will let you know and press you for an answer. 40 seconds on these. Time hasn't been an issue for you so far. Hopefully it still won't. Phase 3 coming up. You're in the next safe zone. Next question's worth 90 miles per hour. Here it comes. Is it 90? I'm sorry, 80. 80 miles an hour is the next question. Here we go.
Okay, let's go.
What was the Atlantic's first storm of the 21st century? A. Allison, B. Alberto, C. Arthur, or D. Arlene?
It was Alberto.
You sure?
Yes.
Final answer, it's locked. How did you think about that answer there?
Well, it was in the 2000. Alberto,
Okay.
the first name.
Okay, good, just checking. It is the correct answer. 80 miles an hour it is. Am I worrying you?
Don't put pressure on me. I mean,
It's my job, Cesar.
and it's your job to not give pressure to me. I will be so insecure.
You would what?
I will answers.
Mm.
Nah, I'm kidding.
But lost you briefly there. Okay, let's go.
I was very sure about my answer. So don't
Good,
worry.
good. Let's go into the next question. 40 seconds. This one's for 90 miles an hour. Which of these Category 5 typhoons occurred in 2016? A. Sudalor, B. Nipatak, C. Noru, or D. Atsani?
2016 Category 5 typhoons, right?
Yep, Sudalor, Nipatak, Noru, or Atsani?
Nipatak.
Final answer.
Yes.
Yes, it is indeed. 90 miles an hour for Cesar. He's getting up there.
Yay! I'm going to get Category 5 storm.
Looking good. No lifelines so far. Just one or two little blips where you've had to think. But hey, it's not bad at all. Next one's 100. I think you'll have noticed that it's got quite a bit easier, hey?
Well, I struggle in 2 questions, but
It won't last forever, Cesar. You gotta make the most
I
of it.
know. Stop it.
Alright, let's calm down. Here we go. Okay. Which 2017 hurricane made the most amount of landfalls? Is it A. Harvey, B. Irma, C. Maria, or D. Ophelia?
It was Irma.
Final.
Yes.
How sure are you about that?
Yes, I'm sure.
Very sure.
It made landfall 4 times as a 185 miles per hour hurricane.
Yeah,
Oh,
crazy storm. It is the correct answer. Cesar up to 100 miles an hour, Category 2.
Oh yes, I'm going to beat Alex.
Oh, that's your foe, is it? Your biggest foe there, Hurricane Alex of
I
2010.
hate that storm. It destroyed my city when I was living in Monterrey. So yes, I
Wow.
have I'm very angry with that storm.
Okay.
I'm going to beat him.
I was just checking something there. Okay, here's your next question. Hopefully you get this right because you get a big jump from 100 to 115 if it's correct, Cesar. I know,
Okay.
but if you get it wrong, you're down to 75 miles an hour, so it needs to be right.
Okay.
This is it. The Weather Prediction Center issues advisories on storms that have done what? A. Degenerated over land. B. Regenerated over land. C. Have potential to form. Or D. Made landfall in the United States.
Oh my. Can you repeat the question again? Sorry.
The Weather Prediction Center issues advisories on storms that have done what? Degenerated over land, regenerated over land, have potential to form, or made landfall in the US.
Have potential to form.
Is that your final answer? The Weather Prediction Center issuing advisories. 15 seconds. Lifeline's there if you need it.
Can you do another question?
You want to flip the question?
Yes.
Okay, we'll stop the clock and we can flip the question because Cesar's totally unsure about that one. Okay.
Yes, I'm not sure with that.
Give the 40 seconds back and we'll do a different question. Here it is. Who makes the decision to retire Atlantic hurricane names? Is it A, the National Hurricane Center, B, B, the World Meteorological Organization, C, the National Weather Service, or D, President of the United States? I knew he would laugh at
The
that.
World Meteorological Organization.
The WMO.
Yes.
Final answer.
Yeah.
Very good. It is the correct answer. Cesar's a major. Oh, you can't get over Trump.
Yeah.
How's the wall looking, Cesar?
The world is looking very good. No wind shear, pretty warm sea surface temperatures, and
Hold on a minute. How does that affect the wall?
I don't know.
Your game's looking good, though. Yes, wind shear's low. I was just thought I'd make a wall joke since you're in Mexico. I mean, you know.
Don't worry. I love it.
Who cares about politics anyway? Here's the next question.
Yes.
The next phase, rather. You're into phase 4 now, where it gets a little bit more difficult. You're up to 60 seconds on the clock, so you have a lot of thinking time for this. And the questions are going to get more tougher, and you've used the 1 lifeline so far. You've flipped the question, but because you got the first 5 questions in a row correct, you do have the double dip at your disposal as well, don't forget. So you'll be able to use any of the others 4 lifelines at your disposal. Question number 13 will get you to 125 miles an hour if it's correct. Here it comes.
Excellent.
Hurricane Opal reached what category level in 1995? A, Category 1, B, Category 3, C, Category 4, or D, Category 5?
It was a Category 4 hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico.
You sure?
Yes.
He's sure, alright, let's not stop him. It's 125 miles an hour for Cesar.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Oh my. Now I'm getting nervous.
Tension's building. And
Yes.
if only you could hear the music in the background.
There's
Tense
no
music in the background. Yeah, I know you can't hear it because you're in a remote location, but we'll hear it in post-production. Cesar, don't spoil it. Come on now.
Sorry.
Oh, keep it light. Here's the next question then. It's worth 130 miles now. You'll be Category 4 yourself if this is the right answer that you give me. Which Category 5 typhoon followed the record-breaking tip of 1979? Is it A, Una, B, Vera, C, Wilda, or D, Anita?
It was Vera.
Vera?
Yes.
Completely sure?
Yes, I'm completely sure about it.
What makes you think it's Vera?
Because I'm pretty sure.
Okay, fine. Just asking. No, the answer's locked in, so I was just wondering if you had any explanation.
Well, because I think Vera was in the 1982 and the others, I don't think they were. So.
Logical, and it's correct. Cesar's a Category 4.
Oh yes, I'm going through the Category 5.
And I don't see Cesar. Well, I can see. Yeah, I definitely can see Cesar getting to Category 5. Let's hope you do. I certainly hope you do. And the next question.
Oh yes, please.
Will get you closer to 140 miles an hour. I wish I could help you more than I can in the game, but here we go with the next one. 15. In total, how many Atlantic storms had names from the Greek alphabet? A, 2, B, 3, C, 5, or D, 6?
6 names.
Yep, in total.
Yes.
Final answer. Cesar looks
Yes.
confident, and it is the correct answer. 140 miles an hour for Cesar.
Oh yes.
This is a little bonus. What was the strongest Greek named storm?
It was Beta, Category 3.
Hmm.
It hit Nicaragua, if I'm not wrong.
When do you think we'll next get to the Greek alphabet? It's not going to be this year.
Please, I don't want another Greek alphabet.
No.
Please.
Terrible, terrible. Okay,
yes.
here's number 16. This will get you to 150 miles an hour, which is equivalent to super hurricane or super typhoon, as they call them.
That would be
And-
super, yes.
And it's the next safe zone if you get this question correct. If you get this one wrong, you'll drop down to 115. But if it's correct, you're at 150, okay?
All right.
Here it is.
Let's go.
Number 16. What intensity did Andrew reach in the 1986 hurricane season? A. Tropical storm. B. Category 1. C. Category 2. Or D. Category 5.
It was a tropical storm.
You sure?
Yes, it was a tropical storm.
Been reading up on your 80s cyclones?
Yes, it was a tropical.
All right. It was Cesar's 150 miles an hour. Hey! That looks like a big load off your shoulder.
Finally.
So Cesar, you're at 150. You're 8 questions away from finishing the game, which is quite amazing in itself. How far do you see yourself getting now?
All of them.
I think you said that last time.
I'm pretty... Well, yes, because I never expected the last time to get wrong, but yes, I was wrong. But now, I don't know, I feel so confident right now. I reached category 4 status. I'm pretty close to reach category 5. So I'm just going to reach that. My objective is there to be at just category 5 status, and then my life will be realized.
Well, I think it's going to get steep now in terms of the difficulty. In stage 5 and 6, which are the last 2 stages, there is no time limit, so that's quite helpful. Yeah, that's nice. No thinking on your feet. And we'll see how it goes, Cesar. Good luck.
All
And
right.
here comes question number 17, worth 155 miles an hour. I think if you ended up losing after 155, you'll probably have the biggest egg on your face that's possible to get in the game, apart from going home with nothing.
Wow.
Because you know how people make jokes about only getting to 155 and not 160. I hope you get to 160. Lots of pressure here. Here we go. How many storms were retired in the 1985 Atlantic hurricane season? Is it A, none, B, 1, C, 2, or D, 3? Can you think of the storms?
1985. You said there's no time limit, right? Oh,
Yeah, that's right.
That's pretty helpful, actually, but oh my god.
As long as you're not typing away ferociously back there, trying to find out the answer. I'll spot you if you do, you know.
I'm not investigating anything. I'm free.
Okay.
Oh my god. 1985. Then none. I don't remember any storm retired in 1985.
How sure are you?
Not completely. I must recognize it, but honestly, I don't remember.
4
any storm
lifelines
retired in
available.
1985.
Up to you exactly what you want to do here. None, 1, 2, or 3.
I think there were none. I'm pretty sure.
Is that your final answer, Cesar?
Yes, I think it was a very inactive season, actually.
1985, you sure?
Yes.
Okay. You were at 150 miles an hour. No risk, essentially, because obviously you don't lose anything if it's wrong. You're hoping it's right, getting closer to Category 5 status. You've said none. Cesar, the correct answer is 2. It's incorrect. I'm so sorry.
Well, I got 150. I cannot be more happy than that.
150 miles an hour, Cesar. It's a wonderful score.
Yes.
Category 4. How pleased are you about that?
I mean, I'm kinda disappointed because I never reached Category 5 status.
Well,
But
always next time.
I'm pretty, I'm pretty happy to reach that stage. I mean, 150. It's pretty good to me. So I have to give some credit about it. Oh my
Indeed.
God.
Yep, 1985 had 2 storms retired. I think it's certainly one. It better not be one. No, 1985.
Can I check now where the names?
Yeah, I can tell you what
Retired
storms were retired that year.
Okay.
It was in 1980, 2 storms that you completely forgotten them. You must have done. Elena and Gloria both retired that year.
Oh, I forgot about Elena. Actually, I was this close to say one because I remember Gloria that was retired, but I never remember in which year.
Which year?
Actually. But yes.
Oh, 1 would have been incorrect as well. It was 2.
That's all bad. Now I feel dumb.
Oh dear, poor Cesar. Well, there's always next time, hey. But
Well,
Cesar goes away with 150 miles an hour, which is not to be sniffed at. If you think you can beat his score in the Super Cyclone Challenge, send us a message through our social mediums, and we might be seeing you very soon. Cesar, thanks very much for joining us. And I'm
Thank
sure
you,
we'll
Nathan.
see you again soon. And yeah, let's 180s question too many there, I think.
Okay.
Don't forget to register your votes for the Viewers Top 10, which will be revealed on Saturday. Voting closes at midnight on Friday evening on Force 13's Hurricane Week page, showing you all the storms that you can vote for. Now we're going to take a look at the storm summaries for June to August 2017. Welcome to part 3 of 4 on Force 13's storm summaries for 2017. In this section, we're looking at all the storms that formed between June and August. And there's quite a few on the selection there. But first of all, I'd like to just annoy everyone by showing them this picture of a subtropical storm that I think was a subtropical storm near Chile in June 2017. I'm joined by everyone here, consisting of Gabe, Dane, Daniel, Craig, and Isaac. First of all, guys, do you have any idea what I'm talking about?
That thing that was supposed to be subtropical that I never knew existed and I don't think was ever a thing.
Yes, actually, I saw that and I was waiting for it to be named.
Sounds like someone's crying in the background.
Maybe that's because we're going on about something that nobody knew.
Oh, here we
existed.
go. That was a very good start, hasn't it?
Oh, this is brilliant.
So I guess everyone's reaction to that subtropical storm is laughter.
Pretty much.
No, it was. I was waiting for it to be identified, but it never was. So it's just been kind of forgotten until right now.
Dane, do you have any thoughts?
Oh yeah, since I've heard of subtropical storms forming near Chile before, I believe there was one in 2015.
16, I think.
That's like the only time that I've seen it ever happen before. So I'm intrigued to say the least.
Right. Okay. And Daniel, do you have any thoughts? We're joined by Marcel.
Jesus Christ.
Well, I don't know why, but for some reason I can't seem to see the screen share.
No, I've turned it off briefly. Marcel, what do you think of the subtropical storm of June 26, June this year, not 2016, you got me confused. June 2017, I'll show you a picture, here it comes. What do you think of that? Subtropical or not?
No.
Okay.
No.
Well, I guess we'll move on in that case.
I'll be back in a minute.
Okay, well that's not very helpful because we've just started the show. Let's move on to the next system then. The first one of the Western Pacific, which was Murbok. I don't actually have a picture of this one, but I do have a mock track forecast map that I made of it. And eventually, it formed in the South China Sea, the first of loads of storms to do that. There was a picture of its forecast. Signal 1 warnings were issued in Hong Kong at the time. I think they were upgraded later on. It hit sort of near there, didn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Do we know how much damage it caused, if any? It was a high-end tropical storm, wasn't
From
it?
Wikipedia, Wikipedia says it was 516 million yen, or about 76 million US dollars.
So that was in Japan, was it? If it was in yen?
It was in China, I believe, Mobok.
Well, that'd be yuan.
Oh dear.
The Chinese currency. But there it was in June. Mid-June became tropical storm, was heading towards the north and didn't do very much. The West Pacific's been silly quiet this year, hasn't it?
Yeah. It's been like 2005.
2005, if anyone remembers it, in the Western Pacific. I don't. Let's move on to the next storm of the West Pac. We'll stay by basin. So the next one is Nanmadol, which looked a bit like this in one particular image in early July. How strong did that end up being?
I think that only ended up just being a tropical storm.
I think it was 65,985.
Pulse 13 did an update or two. It was moving through the Japanese islands there. There's another picture. Little potential eye feature there.
Potential. Looks like it anyway. At least it has a center.
There's another one just a little bit later on. Craig?
I heard that. I heard that dig at Colin.
Oh, God, don't.
I heard that dig.
So, back to the point, Craig. Tropical storm, category 1. What do you think? Small? It's tiny. Look at it.
Well, did the feature sustain itself?
Oh, no.
I've got the feeling it did.
Not forever.
Well, then no.
It was a tiny feature. I'm pretty sure it was borderline typhoon, according to JTWC.
Might have been close.
They were certainly predicting it, weren't they?
Maybe it was like... It looks like operationally it was 65 miles per hour, or maybe it was 70, but I don't necessarily think it reached typhoon status.
Okay. Well, there we are. Let's see if we could get up another image then. I think this next one is Noru. 7W?
I think that is the correct ID number for the fluke.
Have a look at this. That was Noru when it was first intensifying, I believe. I don't actually have a picture of it at peak, even though we know what it looked like. It looked pretty good.
Very large eye.
Yeah, even bigger when it was a category 3 nearing its landfall.
So there's one image of it. There's a few others I can show you as well. There's another one.
It looks like it made landfall as a category 1.
Either way, it was a really large eye.
Let's not forget that the GFS model at one point said that the storm would reach 865 millibars. How about that?
Here we go.
There, Nathan.
I love just bringing that to Craig's attention every once in a while.
Because this is where we can all rub it into the GFS.
It was shocking.
And the ECMWF was along some of them lines as well.
Well, actually,
yes, we saw that.
Yep.
Actually, another storm that was in the Pacific somewhere. What Aoki actually did was initially predicted to have a peak of 220 miles per hour.
What?
And the model for Hurricane Kilo took it to 872 millibars in 2015 as well.
I think we skipped over Talus, but I'm not sure if we're coming back to that or not.
Well, it was probably so irrelevant we didn't even cover it. Talus.
And now we're joined by Hank too.
That
Yes.
would sound right
There it
if
is.
Talus was skipped because, yeah.
I don't even remember which one Talus is. I'm really good
Talus
at my job.
was one of them weak,
6Ws,
looked
right?
to be weak, tropical storms that hit Vietnam.
There's another picture of Noru doing something.
Sure it's not
That's
be- sure
not
it's
a
not
very
being
good
a
image of daylight appearing, and that's Noru later on.
Yeah, the west side appeared to be quite weak.
You don't say.
Well, dry air was impinging it, sheer.
Got a bit better.
Yeah, this thing was pretty much on the verge of near enough death.
Got a bit better on Approach Japan. Really big eye. It makes you wonder, it's always in that sort of area where you get those storms with big eyes, usually on their way out. That's where the record was set, pretty much, just over Okinawa, I think. Typhoon Carmen of 1960, with a 200-mile wide eye, although Winnie might have been larger with its eye.
Yeah, Winnie's eye was pretty big too.
Winnie was certainly the largest
really
in...
depends. We don't really have any good observation of the eye sizes from back then.
No.
Carmen's was on radar, though, so we did manage to see quite a bit of that.
Yes.
But Winnie is certainly the largest eye
The
in
tip probably
contemporary
had, like, this massive
imagery.
eye or whatever.
Sorry?
Mhm.
Probably had like this massive eye or whatever.
Well, Noru certainly didn't reach that record, but it had a pretty substantial eye. Hank, any thoughts on Noru?
Couldn't die.
It didn't die. It did have a weird and wonderful track.
Yes.
Second
Last
longest
thing, like-
lived typhoon ever recorded in the Westpac, only behind Wayne of 1986.
Mm-hmm. I think it was 24 days.
Yeah.
Not 24 days, but it was, for a typhoon at least, not 24 days.
Was
No,
it
not
Wayne,
that
one
as a typhoon.
with like this
Ridiculous amount of
horrendously crisscross track or whatever.
Yeah, it was 19 days that Noru was around.
All right, and would anyone at all like to talk about any storms that occurred between Noru and 14W?
Oh.
Because they're all so boring that I've not got any images of them.
No, they all just kind of. They were just there. They were just there. They were
I mean,
just.
NASAT was interesting, but apart from that, there really wasn't much.
Maybe cool up because it went into, the Fujiwara with Noru back when they were
Oh yeah,
Oh, yes,
that
with
or
was-
whatever, but
Speaking
was
of that,
Other
of
than
the
that, they're not really
Fujiwara
notable.
effect with Noru, it was in like this. It was being stalled and maneuvered by four systems, and it wasn't able to move, and that's why it intensified, because it was over almost a perfect environment, but it just couldn't move anywhere.
Okay.
It was stuck in a call, so it couldn't really move anywhere.
That's what it's called.
happens when you're stuck in between two ridges and two troughs. You can't do anything.
That's
Yes.
the same thing
Let's
that
look at this.
Joaquin was stuck in, I think, Wyatt.
Sorry.
Yeah, it was.
Look at this. This is 14W. Can someone tell me which one this was?
Teen W?
Team Double,
Hmm.
yeah.
Oh, that,
Pretty. Pixelated, but
oh.
pretty.
that one that
Hato?
was it?
It wasn't Hato. It was Banyan. That's it.
yeah.
Oh, right.
Oh yeah.
I was thinking it was either Banyan or Hato.
They look good.
Banyan was very small, wasn't it? It was
It looked
tiny.
really good for a short amount of time, and then it kind of just lost itself, and then just
Just
died
lost its
out.
composure.
All right. Well, that concludes
it
the
re-
Western
it re-
Pacific for this period.
It reminded me of somewhat of Higgos. It just went up category, should have been a category 4 in my mind. I'm pretty sure everyone else would agree it should have been at least a category 4. Reminds me of Higgos. It went to major typhoon and then just got slaughtered by wind shear.
Heroes was much more
Straight up.
extreme, though.
Death.
Heroes was like much more extreme because that was in the middle of February, and it was pretty much deemed to just fall apart.
Yeah.
But then again, so was Banyan because it was going to move into the shear. Well, and that's what it did.
All right. Well, we got our first real look at GOES 16 this year, and one of the first big storms that we managed to see with it was Dora. And in a minute, I will have a video of Dora. Here it is. And once I press the play button, that will be very helpful. There it goes. Beautiful visible imagery of Dora, which was recently upgraded officially by the National Hurricane Center in their post-season, well, not really post-season, is it? But post-storm analysis. Do you agree with the upgrade? Force 13 initially went with that as well.
Yeah, it's deserving upgrade. The Dvorak numbers suggested it. The observations by the scatterometer passes would suggest tight enough pressure gradient for something like that. And yeah, I mean, it was deserving of its upgrade.
I certainly agree. Here's some more pictures of it as well. Go ahead.
I don't remember what its upgrade was. What was it again?
Wasn't it the 105?
Originally,
No,
it was what, 90 miles an hour? Originally?
Yeah, 90.
Yeah, it was about 90,
And it went to 105.
But then it was
miles
put
an
up
hour
to
operationally,
90
but
knots.
then it was upgraded to 205. Which,
What?
What?
Say again.
Wasn't it?
Dora was 205. What?
False alarm, guys. False
I
alarm.
meant 105. That's what I meant to say. 105.
Well, there's a blooper for everyone. There's a blooper.
So not mine for once.
Yeah, yay.
There's
like
some
games
more
when he's-
pictures.
Those 2005 miles an hour.
Oh,
It's
yes.
like game.
Oh.
Anyway, the blooper reels later. I keep having to remind everyone about that. But here's some more pictures of Dora, just some images here and how it was going. Look at that eye. Got a little bit, I don't know. You can see it's starting to lose itself a little bit there on the
It's kind of like
northwestern
a
side.
clouded eye. Like you can see it, but it's kind of clouded.
Yes, definitely. And again, here's some more images. That's early on. That's a nice image. I like that one. That's when we were just in awe about GOES 16 at the time. The satellite. And some infrared views there as well. That was a mess. I think that was before the eye came out, and there it is starting to appear again. A visible and back to the infrared. That's a pretty good picture. That's probably what nudged it to category 2 operationally for us. And there it is again.
Yeah, that probably does look strong enough for category 2.
That definitely looks balanced. The eye looks a little odd, but I don't think that means a ton here.
It doesn't, because it was in its development stages and it got slaughtered by shear before it could have actually gotten to what it could have actually gotten to, which would have been stronger because of much higher MPI values within the area.
Alright, let's now take a look at the next storm over there, which was Eugene, another rather intense storm. There it is, going through on the visible.
Cool.
Pretty storm, isn't it?
It is. It's a very beautiful storm.
Yeah.
Beautiful eye. Looks amazing.
That was a category 3, wasn't it?
Eugene, I think
yeah,
you were
115,966.
Any disagreement on that? I think everyone's agreed with that, aren't they?
I think I put something just a little bit higher, but that's probably me being picky.
Yeah, I put it at somewhere around 117, a little bit.
117.
Oh God.
There's another
I
image.
usually just round.
Just going through the images here.
I think that image is why.
There it is,
before
fading
that.
away. I just wanted to get some water vapor image. That's early on. That is cut off. There's
Wow,
it developing, and that's a later image, the only one that I've got on any infrared scope there, the water vapor imagery, just before it was reaching its peak.
That for me is pretty much where the storm, as you can clearly see, that's probably what looks like a storm that's on its way out. As you can clearly see, the shear's effect.
That was on its way in, I think. That was just before it peaked.
Oh, really?
I think.
Was it?
Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was on its way out.
Because that looks awful like a storm that was on its way out.
Looks like it's being sheared. Just a
'Cause
little bit.
I think it just has
Maybe
inner
it's
core
not.
irregularities. I don't think it's wind shear that's causing it, because if it was wind shear, you'd be seeing some white cirrus off to its east, and that's not what I'm seeing.
Well, true.
Alright, well that's Eugene. Let's now look at the next storm in the East Pack. I think everyone knows what that one is. Fernanda, and it looked a bit like this.
Yes.
The storm in the East Pacific this season, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
By far.
So the question, Category
45.
5 or not? Are we going to have a Matthew discussion here? Matthew-sized. With Devon and Hank.
No. Don't even start that, Nathan.
I mean, that's going to be very hard to tell.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I'll put it down flatline. Matthew, Cat 5, Fernanda, Cat 4. We clear?
Oh, Greg's not happy.
I mean, when it comes to...
Mind you, if Devon was on here,
comes
this would
to
be
last
a
year's
debate.
This year might be a little bit debatable, but Fernanda, no question, Category 4.
Well, there's the imagery.
If
see
it
what the
wasn't a
viewers
Category
think.
4, if it wasn't a Cat 4, I would be really, really questioning what was going through the NHG's heads at that point in time. But
I think I actually have saved loops of the storm somewhere.
it's at least a Category 4.
Right.
Yeah.
That the NHG was going to loop me in the head with Lee 2.0.
Oh
which,
my
by the way,
We'll get on
let's
to that.
totally
Hold
not.
on a minute. You're going a bit too fast here.
Whoa.
There's another image
all
of
the
Fernanda,
horses.
pretty much at its peak. We'll let the viewers decide on what category they would put it at. But there it is. Any more comment?
I'm trying to
It
post
was
a loop of it on chat.
yes, and when it was traveling through the East Pack, it looked fantastic indeed.
All right then. So that was 6E, wasn't it? Yes. What was 7E? Because I don't have any images here. Anyone know?
I think it was
70
the G.
Something called Greg.
Ah, that. Okay, moving on. 8E.
Great. Yeah. Oh yeah. That disappoint.
80 would have been Hillary, right?
Why are you even going to bother mentioning 80?
Oh, here we
80 was a depression. 90 was...
All right. Okay. 90 would have been
Hillary.
Hillary. Okay.
Bottom Clinton.
Oh, there we go. There we go.
Sorry, I just had to.
Unfortunately, the storm. Well, unfortunately for some, never made it to the White House. But there we go.
Oh,
So
That would've been
that's
better
still
for
Fernanda.
everyone.
Sorry. Just move on a little bit here.
Nathan, I hope you are ready to literally just weather the storm of absolute freaking untold fury.
Yeah.
Ironically.
Christ.
Yeah.
But-
just a little bit.
I think the comments are going to be a political mess because of me. Sorry.
Yes, it will be because of you, no doubt. So
Please do not comment about politics in
This-
the comments.
this is
Thank
Hillary,
you.
correct?
Really quickly, though, I want to mention something.
Oh,
Okay, go on.
The remnants of Dawn actually did help trigger Hillary.
Oh, jeez.
Dawn literally
Oh,
did trigger
Jesus
Hillary.
NHC were asking for trouble when they had Don and Hillary on either side of North America.
But what's worse is that there were some. Wow. Do I want to say some people were hoping for Dawn and Hillary to be active at the
I
same time?
desperately wanted them to coexist. Daniel, what did you think of Don and Hillary?
I didn't really follow them.
No, you didn't follow them. No.
Because either one of them. I'm sorry if I'm going to make.
Would
this
you have
joke,
preferred
but one
Hurricane
of them-
Bernie?
So I don't really
I
follow
definitely
them.
would. I definitely would, Nathan. I definitely would.
I know you
I would
would.
not like that at all.
Okay.
Let's just move on.
Why is this gone political all of a sudden?
More
Dang
Hillary.
it.
Because
That's your
of me.
fault.
I'm sorry. Because of me.
There it is, struggling there. Then it got its act together a little bit later on, didn't it? And
It
ended up.
was supposedly
it
category
Where's
never,
it
two.
at?
it never closed off an eye wall. It looked awful its whole
As
life.
you can see, it never got a particularly good visible eye. And 10E, what would that have been?
Irwin.
Irwin.
Owen. Yes. I was
Yes.
looking forward to Owen this year, actually, since
Really?
the first storm that I NHC advisory on was Owen in 2011.
Oh, right, I see. Well, there, in fact, is all three storms. Well, in fact, you can't see all three on the screen. There they are. I think if... So is that Greg, Irwin, and Hillary? If I'm not mistaken.
Greg, Hillary, and 8E.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So Irwin's not on that shot, is it? This is in the 10E folder of mine, so I'm sure one of these is Owen.
Well, Hillary should be
Maybe it
active
is-
at the
maybe it
same
is wrong.
time. What's the date on it? If it's July 22nd.
24th.
Well, then it will be.
Then it is.
Irwin is one of them. Irwin,
Owen's
I think,
probably in the middle.
Far right.
Okay.
Everyone's the one in the middle.
Or is it? Oh, right, okay. I'll
I'm
stand
guessing
corrected.
Jova might be the one on the right.
Oh,
So I'll
Jova
guess.
came a while later. That came from Franklin.
That one, Irwin. I think the storm that was next to Irwin's, I think, was another depression.
Yeah.
A little
Well, it didn't
bit.
come until a little bit later. It didn't come until after it exploded.
That's true.
Okay. Now let's move on, because that might be a good idea, to the Atlantic in June to August.
Oh, here we go.
And
There we go.
we begin. Where is it? With a picture that I'll be showing you shortly,
Right.
which I could not yet show.
Brett, the storm that should have lived twice as long as it
This
actually did.
picture, which was just before it became Brett, well, quite a bit before it became Brett, when Force 13 first started advisories, it was way out in the Atlantic. This is one of Force 13's stills from a Force 13 video. This was later on when Brett first formed. That's where it was. Odd place for a storm, and one of very few storms that made landfall on Trinidad. Who'd like to pick up on
storm
that?
that should have formed like 24 hours before it actually did.
Yes.
So tell us about this.
I agree.
Agreed.
Tell us about why, how, and the wherefores.
Because it formed a close center by at least 3Z on June 19th, which was 24 hours before landfall in Trinidad. It had formed a nice centralized convection area, developed pretty much a CDO actually over the center. It had enough inflow, and its overall directional velocity was enough to consider that the center of it to be close and be producing at least tropical storm force winds.
Which I think Recon did find.
Just some fun factoids.
Recon didn't go in until they actually designated it.
Dane?
Just some fun factoids here. Wasn't Brett like the earliest MDR storm on record and the lowest latitude named storm in June since
It was
1933? I think it was.
It was the earliest MDR storm, yes, but it was not the lowest latitude storm.
No.
That's right. Although it was, it joins not very much company in its landfall in Trinidad. I mean, people think about, well, some of us think about the 1933 hurricane that hit there, but not much
other
else.
Brett.
The other Brett. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
1993. Okay, well, that's pretty much it for Brett. Force 13 did a lot of coverage on that. You remember that? Pretty much around the summer solstice it was. And
Yes.
I remember we did sundown to sun up at Force 13 HQ that evening as Brett made landfall around midnight in Trinidad, wasn't it? A little bit later. Okay, let's move on to the next picture of the next storm, which you should all know which one it's going to be. It's going to be this. Oh dear. What's that? That is a blob near the coast of Honduras.
Which will eventually go on to become Cindy.
And there's some visible of it developing near Grand Cayman. And we were, well, I was very confused. It had apparent circulation and it didn't, and then it looked like Colin, and then it became Cindy.
A bunch of relocations.
And some people dispute whether it became subtropical before landfall or whatever.
But there
But
is
then,
a major
look,
dispute that it
ta-da!
had-
We found the circulation! We found it! There it was!
And look at this, look at this. That is a sensor, and that is something Colin did not
Yes,
have.
that's right.
Yes.
But then Cindy went 4 better. Not 1 better, but look, 4 circulations. It was moving inland.
Four
Before it moved
little,
inland.
four
Those aren't
little
circulation.
vortices.
Those are more
Circulation.
those are more forticities. The actual circulation is the lobe of all of them. That's what the energy actually classified as it.
But there it
Not meant
was.
to be a buzzkill here.
And at one point it appeared to have 5 of those.
I can confirm it probably did have 5 little.
And
Very briefly.
And Cindy gave me minor cloud cover, really minor cloud cover over here on my area for about, I want to say 1 or 2 hours, which I took a picture of.
You can probably
Other than that,
pretty much looking at it there.
It. Yeah, I posted it in the chat if you want to.
Same here.
Let's put it up there.
I do recall us getting like some rain and thunderstorms here at HQ from Cindy.
But look at all the dryness that came in behind
inland.
it.
I don't know whether anyone has the tornado charts that Cindy generated.
I think it generated like 5.
I don't think it generated many tornadoes, but I know it did generate some.
Yeah.
Some
Actually, when Cindy was after it made landfall, it did. I wasn't there to receive any of weather here at home, but actually, my parents did tell that it was the loudest and most horrifying night in terms of weather that they've ever experienced. There were like 5 lightning flashes in all the yards, and the wind was just ridiculously strong, and that made me wonder that if tropical storm force winds did go and hit our place. I wasn't there to experience them, though, as I've already said.
Mm-hmm.
So wherever it made landfall, it did affect us, and it did affect here, and somewhere around a little bit of Dallas and inland of a little bit of parts of Louisiana.
All right, then who'd like? Go on.
A native Texan, and Cindy was not the worst storm for me. I think we all know what storm was.
Okay, we'll get on to that. We'll get on to that.
Gabe, I'm not exactly sure where you are in Texas, but I mean, like if I knew, I would be able to have a.
Yes, I do live in Texas, but we just live really far inland. I think the only tropical storm that I've actually experienced was like with 45 mile per hour maximum sustained wind speeds.
Okay.
When the wind was so strong that you could actually see the like little bits of curtains.
The rain curtains.
Water droplets. Yeah, the rain curtains. It was strong enough to carry little visible water droplets along with the wind.
We better press on. We've only been
compared to what we're gonna see next.
We've been here for 30 minutes already. We better press on.
That's not a story for right now.
Who'd like to talk about 4L?
What?
Oh yeah, that was a thing.
Oh yeah.
That Nathan claims does not have any closed circulation.
I've got no pictures of this one.
It actually burned by ASCAD.
I forgot that even was a thing.
Here's what some people said about 4L. This could pull a Sandy on us, but we'll see.
Oh my god. What?
Who was that?
I won't tell you in public. I won't tell you in public.
Okay, fair enough.
And what else do we have? That's about it, really.
Jesus Christ.
But one person did say that, yes. And then after that, we had Dawn. And let me just get some pictures up of Dawn. That would be helpful, wouldn't it?
And it didn't build a wall if anyone was hoping.
Let's just talk about
the Philippine wall of islands literally stopped him.
Now, Dawn is somewhere on this image. I don't think it's that one. I think it's on the right.
The Caribbean wall of yours stopped Dawn.
No, that is Dawn. That is Dawn there.
Dawn got trumped by the shear.
Certainly did.
It got walled.
See, we can make jokes about both of them.
Yes.
If anyone has any complaints, I am so sorry.
That was sort of before Dawn formed there in that imagery, and I can barely remember how well it did. It died, but was it straight away in the
it pretty much got designated, and then it just straight up died.
It formed, and then it just got
trumped
by wind shear.
Well, Emily is so poor that I don't have it on here. But just before we get on there... Oh, shut up. Before we get on there, this is what some people said about Dawn. Don's expected to make landfall in southeast Florida before entering the Gulf of Mexico.
They're probably talking about 4L because the remnants of it did actually move by Florida.
Ah, I see.
Yeah.
How interesting.
But didn't somebody make a prediction about Dawn was supposedly to quote unquote rapidly intensify?
Not to my knowledge.
No.
I think someone did.
Not to my knowledge.
I'm pretty sure it actually was supposed to, but it fell apart before it actually could. It was actually on the road to it, and then it just kind of lost circulation.
And who'd like to talk about Emily? Sorry, talk about Emily. Some people thought it had an eye.
Oh yeah.
Disorganized, and then it organized, and then kind of ran into Florida. As a weak truck, kind of, or whatever, whatever it was when it did make landfall, and it was truck. Huh?
45 miles an hour at landfall.
That's I know what it looks like, and it. I think it was one of the very few storms that it became tropical. It became organized before it made landfall. Actually, another storm that gained tropical storm intensity just hours before its landfall was Allison in 2001.
And Julia.
That was
last year.
Yeah.
Julia actually became a tropical storm over land.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Closing in.
Okay, let's go to.
Oh, there we go.
I must hurry us along because we're running out of time. Here's the next storm, which looks a bit like this, or began looking a bit like this, and became Franklin, and then moved towards the coast of the Yucatan Peninsula. Lots of images to look at here. People got really excited with this picture as it was approaching the peninsula. People were shouting, "Look, it wasn't."
And okay.
And that's
even if it was one, I don't know why people were excited about it, because people were in trouble.
It looked,
Over here, Franklin actually gave my area increased moisture, not cloud cover, but increased moisture from when it made landfall. So I got to see some pretty nice showers over here, albeit not from the outer bands or anything, just from the remaining moisture.
There it was on the other side in the Bay of Campeche, moving towards the coast of Mexico, and I'm sure you've all got thoughts about its peak intensity.
I'd say 90 miles per hour. Because that's what aircraft reconnaissance recorded. It actually could be even a little bit higher than that. In fact, I might be the first to say this, but I might not even rule out briefly hitting Cat 2.
I wouldn't. I don't disagree with that. Actually, it may have briefly become a Category 2.
What do you think of this particular image?
That looks to have a pretty decent case and a pretty decent shot at it. But everyone, I'm not going to judge anyone saying it's a Category 2. I mean, it does have a chance of being at that, but I'm going to say
it does look
90 miles an hour. I'm going to say 90.
90 is what that's probably going to be put at.
Yeah.
It's definitely 90. Category 2 is debatable, but I would say 90 definitely shows it.
Really, I actually don't think it is, because I think Recon actually got 82 knots. So,
depending on where it was, I'm assuming that this is obviously flight level, or is this drop zone?
Oh, that was a drop zone. That was actually that was on the ground.
On the ground. That's
so
interesting.
This was what? Let me guess. In the quote unquote eye wall.
Yeah. Well, it's there. You just gotta look.
Northeast eyeball. Wow. We have found out in the past few years that one wind barb does make all the difference.
Oh no!
Refer to what was it? Was it
Tina?
Yeah, refer to T name Eastern Pacific. There you go.
Anyway, let's take a look at this. This is 1 minute goes 16 imagery of the early development phase of Gert, and it became.
That's what I thought it was.
The damn the damn thing I said would never form.
According to Force 13, a Category 3 storm.
And it was the damn thing I said.
Some people don't.
I knew it was gonna form.
Well, the thing is that when it entered the jet stream, some folk would obviously expect it to just get absolutely slaughtered. The problem is that in order for a storm to be ripped apart completely, is that the storm has to be moving against the shear. Gert wasn't. Gert was moving with it.
Here's Gert.
So in that fact, you can see there, this is probably when Gert was in the jet stream.
Yeah.
Because Gert was moving with the shear.
105,967.
Yeah, I think that was 115.
They haven't released the report on it yet.
Yeah. But you can see there, the storm was moving with the jet stream shear.
It was interesting because it was a rare example of a storm that once it gets underneath a jet streak, it takes off. And that normally doesn't happen because, as Craig said earlier, it was going with the shear. But there was so much potential velocity in the area that it just pretty much ate it all up and then was able to pretty much rapidly intensify into a Cat 2.
I think probably the I don't know what, there's not really many cases of that happening in the Atlantic. I mean, the last real case I would probably see of that happening would have to be Western Pacific with Sonda, because it did the exact same thing, entered the jet stream but strengthened whilst moving with the wind shear.
Well, I guess this is another one that we'll leave up to the viewers to decide whether they think it was a Category 3 or not. Interesting, anyway.
I think it was. It could have easily been borderline Category 2, very weak Category 3, maybe. Debatable.
Oh, this storm is going to be interesting. Oh,
I have personal experiences for the next storm that I want to share.
There is everyone still somewhere.
I think we all know where this is all going to go.
The next storm looked a bit like this.
Oh yeah.
I hold on. I'm gonna retell my personal experiences from this one. If you guys don't mind.
No, don't.
When it first formed and all that, it was a pretty decent storm entering the Caribbean through the Leeward Islands, and obviously got wrecked by that line of wind shear, and it nearly died. We thought a lot of people thought that was probably going to be the end of it, but it ended up taking advantage of obviously the favorable conditions in the environments in which it was in, and I remember I think it was the 23rd or 24th, seeing the most just have it directly hitting wanting it to directly hit my city, which I thought I never wanted to happen, but I knew that the time would come and that they wanted to come this early. And I remember just thinking, just like, please God, don't let this happen. And it did, but thankfully though, it missed me to my north by a few hundred miles. Albeit we did receive Category 1 force gusts, probably maybe even possible isolated Category 2 force gusts on the outer parts of the coast here. And this is one of the few storms I had to evacuate for. The last one I could remember that I evacuated for was Claudette in 2003, was I think the last storm I had to evacuate for. We went over towards Cuero, Texas to evacuate there, but because that was really the only place we could actually go, because we thought it was going to hit our city directly. Then we had to get out of Cuero. We moved over to Seguin, Texas, which was still kind of in the fire line of it. We got sustained winds of around, I think, moderate tropical storm force. I think we got into the higher range tropical storm force gusts. In that area, we received lots of rain. It was a really scary experience. I hope to never, in my life, have to deal with this situation again. But we had to deal with it. Then to keep the story short, we were traveling back down about 2 days after the storm made its closest approach to Seguin on the 29th, I think it was, or 30th of August. We came back down from the south, and then we went into Refugio, Texas. And in Refugio, Texas, we saw complete destruction. There's none there. Everything was gone. There was trees down everywhere, powers out. Power poles were snapped in half. There was roofs completely gone. It was chaotic, and just the constant thought running through my mind was just how darn lucky I was for this not to have hit my area, and that's really all I could say is that I'm really lucky, and I hope it doesn't happen again. But who knows? And that's really all I have to say about my experience. Keep it a long story short. So sorry I took up you guys' time, but you guys could go ahead.
Here's a track of what Harvey did, and you can see from the 18th of August onwards there on that imagery and how quick it intensified on approach to Texas.
Yeah.
I'll briefly talk about my experience. I'm in Austin, so I didn't really see much from it, but we got 10 inches of rain and maximum gusts of around 50 miles per hour. I got spared. Unfortunately, my mom grew up in Rockport, which is exactly where Harvey hit. Still don't know if her childhood home is still there. It could be, it could not be. Port Aransas is a place where I spent a lot of my childhood growing up, and that was also hit by Harvey. Same thing with Corpus Christi. Family in Houston, most of them got off pretty easy. Some of them did not. Is a storm that shouldn't be forgotten in a very long time. I myself have written a report on it. There have been there are reports that it's the costliest storm in American history, pretty much.
Wasn't it like 200 billion or something like that?
Close to
198. Possibly
So
not
198 estimated.
Yeah, according to a model.
That is estimated. That's from a model run, so that's not really.
Yes. That's
total
not
to really
true
go off of.
calculations.
Yeah, we can't really go off that total, but what we can go off of is the actual from not just Houston, but the areas that in the landfall area, like Rockport, Corpus Christi, Port Aransas, and then other places around Houston, such as Beaumont, Port Arthur, and Lake Charles, which also got hit pretty hard by Harvey.
Yeah, we over in Corpus, they did a total and preliminary total, and they said that we received in Corpus about $500 million in damages. Obviously not as bad as Rockport or anything like that, but that's what we had.
Actually, I want to go ahead and say that. Sorry, but I want to go ahead and say that. I had family that lived down there around, not down by Rockport, but actually lived down in Houston, which is where the rainfall total was. I believe it was. I have a cousin that he was going to be a meteorologist, but he didn't. But that's the important thing is that he experienced or he saw the aftermath of both Harvey and Katrina. And what he saw from Katrina was absolutely nothing compared to Harvey. He said that Harvey was easily 10 times worse, maybe even more so, and that it could have been much worse than it actually was. The reason that Katrina was so bad was not because of the actual wind speeds and water, but it was actually because of the failing levee system. Harvey was the one came in shore and dumped all that storm surge and then dropped a whole bunch of flooding rains, and the water, had nowhere to go except up and in people's homes. And in some places, water was nearing second stories, or was over one story, and was a lot of people when they went through the aftermath, there were things. There was a story my cousin told of a church that was completely demolished, and it was pretty bad. There was garbage everywhere from the debris, and it all just piled up, and the smell was horrid. And a lot of people have gone through this storm, and I think that this storm is not going to be forgotten for a very long time.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
We have to finish up now, but we've got just 2 minutes to tell us about 10L.
Let's just forget about that.
Oh dear.
It wasn't even a tropical cyclone, so I don't even know why we're mentioning it.
It was a
I was gonna
PTC
say-
according to the National Hurricane Center. I guess that raises the debate about these PTCs and the people getting confused. And are they not really necessary? I think no.
I was going to quickly add there, Nathan, on Harvey.
Go on.
And-
Go on,
I know, before, I think me and Isaac have been over a couple of times. When we were looking back at Harvey, I think me and I remember very vaguely that me and Isaac discussed that when Harvey was heading towards potentially a direct hit on Corpus Christi, that radar had depicted concentric eye walls, which meant Harvey was going to do an eye wall replacement. What was weird is that Harvey, pretty much, that's what spared Corpus Christi in a way, but not avoiding hurricane force winds. Unfortunately, Rockport got the full force. So instead of that, you've seen there in the visible imagery of Harvey, the eye wall replacement wasn't a normal one where the old eye clouds over and a new one forms around it and takes over. The old one collapsed, but it never clouded over, and the new one formed but was already there. It's hard to explain. But I remember, a lot of folks sadly making jokes, and I was making one of them when Harvey was about to or when it was about to die. We all thought it was about to die.
But some people were making jokes when Harvey was approaching land.
Yeah, that is where, as a storm trackers, we all are, and as proper human beings as we all are, we have common sense to literally have the decency, discipline to turn around and say, you're taking this too far. This isn't funny. People are going to either risk losing their lives, but they're losing their homes. They're losing their memories. Something they've worked so hard for to earn.
And finally, what did you think of our coverage of Harvey?
I think we did the best we could, trying to inform the people in the way of Harvey, trying to keep them up to date as best as we could. I don't think we could have done any better than what we did. I was really impressed after we finally, when Harvey did finally
then we all got ill.
Yeah, we did all get ill.
Well, I'm afraid
after that was
because we still had Irma and Maria to deal with, and that just made us
that's what we'll be talking about tomorrow. But for now, we have to finish up. We've had an excellent conversation. Thanks very much, everyone, for taking part. And
You're welcome.
Thank you. And we'll be back again tomorrow to be talking about what happened from September to November, which we're near at the end of now. And quite a bit happened in that particular chapter.
Yep.
Make sure you don't miss it in part 4 of 4. But from now, from all of us here, that's all. And we'll see you again soon. Good night.